Hello guys, welcome back. Now in this session we are going to start our learning assignment 14 where we are going to implement SharePoint service layer using PnP JS. So let's start our session. So guys, if you remember that we are working in one of the layered architecture where we are having two pieces of development. One is user interface, another one is the service layer. So user interface, which we have already seen in our last session, where we have used Office UI Fabric and we have designed the UI. Now in this session, we are going to start our journey to design and implement service layer, and within that service layer, we are going to perform four operations, that is create, read, update, delete. We will design four functions that help us perform these actions on SharePoint list. And to create all these functionality, we are going to use PnP framework. You remember that in our earlier sessions, I have designed the same functionality using SP HTTP module, but this time we are going to use PnP module. So guys, to start the development with PnP module, we have to first make it ready to use the PnP, and that is the prerequisite which we must have to follow to start our development with PnP framework. So in this session we are going to perform two tasks which is a prerequisite task to start our development for service layer. So what are those tasks we are going to perform? Let's look into that. So guys, we will configure PnP JS so that in the upcoming session we can start using the PnP framework in our project. In the second task, we are going to install SP Editor Chrome extension that is very useful tool whenever we are working with the service layer. And this tool gives us many of the functionality. By using those functionality, you can speed up your development process. And this is one of the best practices which I follow whenever I develop the service layer. After the installation of SP Editor Chrome extension, then I will give you the answer with the help of one example. So how it will help us to speed up our development process whenever we are writing the code for service layer using PnP. So now let's proceed further and perform task 1, that is configure PnP JS. So guys, to configure PnP JS, we have to follow certain steps. So what are those steps? Let's look into that. Guys, I am inside the official documentation of PnP, and over here it has given certain steps which we need to follow to configure PnP JS. So the first step, we need to install npm install @pnp/sp. So we will copy this one and go to the Visual Studio Code and run it, and make sure that we are using --save. Don't use this one @pnp/graph. This we will see it later. So we are going to install only this part of it. So let's do it. Copy it and come to the Visual Studio Code where you have written your project, and over here we need to paste it, and then we need to make sure that we are telling that save enter. So this will install the PnP module. So this is our first step. Now let's look into the second step. Now in the second step, we need to perform certain steps. Now in the second step, we need to uninstall the Rust Stack compiler. So why we need to uninstall this Rust Stack compiler? Because we are working on SPFX version 1.14. If you remember that while doing the setup, we have set up the Docker for 1.14 version. And to use the PnP in SPFX version 1.12 and later, we have to follow these steps to use it. So let's proceed further and copy this line of code and come back to Visual Studio Code and paste it. Enter. So it will uninstall the Rust Stack Compiler 3. So now let's proceed further. Now next we need to install Rust Stack Compiler 4.2. So this version we are going to install it so that PnP will get the required compiler. So copy this one, come back to Visual Studio Code and paste it over here. Now once it is being done, then we have to perform another step that is inside the tsconfig.json file. So over here we are having the reference of Rust compiler 3.9 that we need to change it, and that is our next step. So let me show you again. Over here you will see that this is what it is mentioning. We need to change it. Currently it is showing 3.9. We need to replace it with 4.2. So let's go back and do this step. Over here we need to mention 4.2 and save it. Now let's proceed further. Now the next step, we need to update Gulf file of the project, else it will throw an error. So what line of code we need to update it? This is the line we need to update in our Gulf file in our project. So let's copy this one, or better I can say that you should copy the entire code and we will replace the Gulf file code, and that is what this step is mentioning. But if you will closely look into the code or compare the code of the Gulf file, you will find the difference between this line, and this is the line which is basically disabling the TS-lint functionality so that your compiler will not complain about any kind of a syntax warning. And why we are getting the warning? That is because of the lint process. So lint process is nothing but a way by which your linter program will validate that is there any potential issue. For example, if lint is enabled, you must be seeing that your compiler is complaining that you have missed the semicolon. So all these things is happening through the linter program. So now let's proceed further and perform this step in Visual Studio Code. So over here I will come and go to gulf-file.js, and if you will closely look into that, is the same program. The only difference is in this line where it is disabling the linting. So over here I am going to paste the entire code. So it is throwing an error. Better revert it back and then we will change only that line. So let me do that. I will come over here and copy this line of code, and over here we will paste that line of code. So we are done with this, and over here we will paste this line of code. Save it. Now we are done with this step. So guys, now we are done with the task 1 where we have set up the prerequisite to use the PnP framework. Now let's proceed further. In the task 2, we are going to install SPE editor, that is a Chrome extension. So to install SPE editor, we need to go to the Google, and over here we need to mention that SPE editor. And this will give us, and then click on first link SPE editor, and over here you will get the install option. As I already installed this extension, so that's the reason I'm getting removed from Chrome, but you get the option to install it. So let's install it. Once you install this extension, we are done with the task 2. Now let's look into the step how to use this extension. To use this extension, you have to open your SharePoint site. Over here I have opened my SharePoint site, that is SPFX exerciser. Then you need to press Ctrl+Shift+I, and then you will get the console over here, and over here you will get this arrow key. You need to press this one, and then you will get the option SharePoint. Once you do that, then it will give you many of the options to work with your SharePoint. For our scenario, we are going to design the service layer, and prior to writing the code for the service layer, I am making sure that the PnP JS is working fine or not. So how I will check that my PnP is working fine or not? So there is a tab given that is called PnP JS console, and over here you can validate all the PnP functions which you want to test it. And within this PnP console, you can test all the endpoint which PnP provides. So this is the place where we can quickly check whether our endpoint is working or not, and then we will take that working code inside our service layer program. So now the question over here is how you can test the PnP JS endpoint in SPE editor. What kind of code you will write to check the endpoint functionality? And the answer to this question you will find in next session. In the next session, we are going to test create, read, update, delete functionality using this SPE editor PnP JS console. So on this note, I am stopping over here. See you in the next session. Till then, bye bye. Take care.